Hey, this is Shaun with the Atlanta Tennis Podcast, powered by GoTennis. Check out our calendar of Metro Atlanta tennis events at letsgotennis.com. And if you're a fan of Bull Shark Sports, go to shop.letsgotennis.com. Get yourself a hoodie or a hat. And while you're there, check out the Atlanta Tennis Monsters collection, exclusive to GoTennis, just in time for Halloween. Today, this is Youth Sports Talk with Coach Ben Hesley. Today's talk, Coach Ben says, don't miss practice. Ben, you ready to talk youth sports?
Yeah, let's dive in.
All right. Today, Coach Ben offers a PSA, a public service announcement for parents, kids, and coaches that practice is important. Ben, where do you want to start?
So anytime I think about the word practice, I can't help but have Allen Iverson's rant in my brain. And for those of you who are familiar, so I think we're coming up on, I don't know, almost 10 years ago that he did this in a press conference and just a rant about practice. And it kind of goes something like, he's like, practice? We talking about practice? Not a game. We're talking about practice. And it's just funny to me because it just reminds me, not that you want Allen Iverson to be a role model for your kids. In fact, you want to do quite the opposite of what he was insinuating in the interview, is that practice is important and you should do everything that you can to get your kid to practice.
So Allen Iverson being the bad example, because he thinks games are more important, especially at a press conference. We get that. So kids don't necessarily have a press conference, but we do have that post-match interview that we talked about. We've got an episode specifically with that conversation about what happens afterwards, and you talk to the kid. But today, we want to talk about getting your kids to practice. Now, definitionally, we've had this conversation as well. We want to talk about the coach-led practice, which is a phrase you use, Ben, versus at-home practice, hitting on a wall, playing with your friends. There's all kinds of practice. Where are we going with this?
Well, let's focus on the coach-led practice, the team practice, your group tennis practice or whatever that you go to. And if it's an individual sport, you still may have a group session, a gymnast, go gymnastics, you have a gymnastics class, a tennis class, you may call it, or practice, but it's something that there is routinely that you've signed up for to go. Now, for points of the conversation, let's just stick to the team sports for a second. So, I know that, first of all, I'll say this, parents, I know the weeks are tough. I know that weeks are stressful. There's a lot going on. You probably have several children you're trying to get to these various practices, their own stuff going on, your own stuff going on, your spouse's stuff going on. And so it's really easy just to be like, oh my God, I'm so overwhelmed. But let's just take a break. Let's just skip practice tonight. Let's just not go. Okay. But how many times have you said, you know what? It's the weekend. Like, I really want to get away for the weekend. Like, let's just miss the game. How many parents say that? And my biggest issue
less common, you think?
Absolutely less common. And I'm speaking completely from my anecdotal experience of both a sports coach and a youth sports parent. And what I have seen is that parents often will skip a practice, but they're going to be there for the game, right? Because the game is the part that's the fun part, man. That's the entertainment. That is you got the uniform and the referees. And we talked a little bit about in our last episode about the lack of free play in the world today, because everything and I mentioned my friend who just organizes loose soccer games with kids in our neighborhood, and there's no referees. And now that's not appealing to some people because there's no, where's the referee? Why are we not wearing uniforms? Where's the scoreboard? Who's doing that? And so you go to a practice field or a practice court, and that's not as appealing because it just doesn't deliver the same appeal and to parents as the more formalized uniform on, Johnny's new outfit. Here's the referee, the scoreboard's on. We got our picture going on. How many people Facebook post, hey, we had practice tonight on Wednesday. It was raining a little bit. We got out there and got done, dug in, got dirty, and had some fun, and we fielded some ground balls, and we got better. How many Facebook posts do you see of that versus, hey, look, we're at the game today. Look at Billy and Susie in their uniforms. So that's where I'm going with that, is that if at all costs, get your kid to practice.
And in that case, considering people are busy, considering the schedule, I had a conversation with a parent recently, similar conversation. I think my kid's regressing. Well, yeah, she is. Why do you think that is, Coach? Well, she's scheduled to practice tennis to go to a coach-led practice twice a week, and she's averaged less than one participating. You just haven't made it to practice. She's been busy. She's doing other things. She's got school plays, and there are other priorities, and I get it. My statement would be get your kid to practice is great, but once a week isn't enough. We don't do anything else in our lives once a week that we actually are interested in caring about to get better at, right? We might do movie night once a week, but that isn't something you're trying to improve your ability to accomplish. So from a sports point of view, soccer, isn't it rarely that it's like, all right, Wednesdays are practice and Saturdays games? Most of the team sports have multiple days of practice. You've got to commit. But if I've got 3 or 4 days of practice, or even include the game as practice, because that's all it is for kids, if I got 3 or 4 days a week and I miss one, I'm still getting my kid to practice overall, right? Does that give me a better shot at success?
Well, there's been studies, honestly, that show that if you practice twice a week, that you will improve 4 times faster than someone who just practices once a week.
I think it's exponential in how that works. So I would guess 3 times a week.
Yeah, I mean, there's a law of diminishing returns. You don't need to practice 4 days a week. That's probably plus your game. So now you're at 5 dates a week in that sport. That's probably a little much.
But now you're picking on.
And we're talking. We're targeting more. Yeah, we're targeting more the youth level. We're talking youth, kind of recreational to entry level, select or travel ball. We're not talking about your 13 plus middle school, high school kids. Those kids, but they may not be doing their sport specifically those many days, but they are working on their overall athleticism or something. Like many kids that are middle school, high school that are playing competitively in soccer, baseball, tennis, whatever, they might do their sport 3 days a week. Maybe it's 2 days a week of a coach-led practice, another day a coach-led team practice, another day a week of an individual practice, maybe with a coach, maybe with a parent, maybe with that by themselves. And then there's a workout, training, all those sorts of things. So that does happen at the older levels. My biggest concern is at the youth sort of recreational level. Let's think about what we're paying for and include practice in that equation. And I want to use an example that when my son first started, and it was a summer when he was 9, and we were thinking about him starting to play tournament baseball. So he was going to try out for an all-star team. And I remember talking to the guy who's actually become a really good friend of mine, and he was the head of the organization, or he was going to be the head coach for this team that my son was going to try out for. I remember talking to him because the situation was Turner was interested. We felt was of the right skill to make one of these teams, but we had a conflict where he was going to go to summer camp, and the sleepaway camp dates were going to conflict with the back end of the schedule. So he was going to miss like the last 1 or 2 weeks of the season. I just want to be upfront and ask and say, hey, here's a situation. I don't want you to be surprised. Here's our conflict. And the guy was really nice, and he said something to me that's always struck with me. He said, remember, you're paying for the practices. He goes, yes, we play a lot of tournaments and there's uniform costs, but really what this all-star and thing is about is the extra practice that your kid is going to get and how that's going to help them get better. And that is always struck with me. And I thought, yes, he's exactly right. Like when we think about costs, and on our last show, we talked about one of our last shows, we talked about the cost of playing youth sports, right? The registration fees, the travel fees, all that stuff. But one thing that we forget when we think about our registration fees or our team fees, whatever you want to call them, we think about, okay, that goes for uniforms, that goes for swag, that goes for maybe paying the referees or the umpires for games, those sorts of things. But think about maybe if it's paid coaches, you're paying for the coaches as far as that. But whether it's a volunteer coach or a paid coach, part of your paying is the right to be on the field or on the court with that person that's designated to help your kid. And we shouldn't take lightly that opportunity. It's a great opportunity to develop. And we think about signing our kid up for a youth sport, we should put the practice of that sport at the forefront of the schedule that we're designing for our kid.
The analogy that comes to my mind is school. So, say you send your kid to a traditional school, and Monday through Thursday you have class, and then Friday you have all your tests. I'm simplifying for the example, right? So, what's actually more important, the training to prepare for the test or the test? So if I compare that to soccer and say, okay, I got my 3 soccer practices and then I got the Saturday game, which should I miss if I had to pick one? And if you got 3, maybe you pick one practice because you don't want to miss the game. But the game isn't where your kid is learning. The game is where your kid is tested and where we find out what they've learned to prepare for that performance. Now, I guess if I go to theater, when I say the word performance, you don't want to miss a performance. Missing a rehearsal is one thing, but you can't miss the performance because the team, or in this case, the acting troupe, is relying on you. You're playing a specific role, right? So you don't have the goalkeeper decide, I don't feel like showing up on Saturday, right? But if he misses practice, all right, stick one of the other kids in there, and he can pretend to be the goalkeeper for practice.
Yeah, but I
So
can tell you
there's
this:
one or the other,
if
right?
the kid, well, if the kid the goalkeeper doesn't show up for practice and he shows up for the game and gets like 5 goals scored on him, the team's gonna be super pissed.
He's not going to be the goalkeeper for long.
Hey, why didn't you come to practice? If you'd have came to practice, maybe you would have saved those 5 shots, right? And I see that too a lot, and that really is something that annoys me. You know, the kid that doesn't come to practice all week because it's too stressful, or we were out of town, or whatever. But then they're there for the game. They're there for the game, and I just say don't do that to the other kids. I know the games are fun. The games bring a lot of socialization for both parents and the kids. And that's what really the game, like you mentioned, the game from an athletic standpoint is the test. How is what we practicing? How does that match up in competition? And competition, as I tell parents, is part of development. You do need to play formal games, tournaments. You do need to compete as part of your development, but it's not the sole purpose. You've got to be able to practice leading into that. And if you miss practice this week, then think about maybe sitting out of the game that week, right? If you're not able to practice with your kid on your own. Now, sometimes I'll get calls from parents and say, "Hey, look," and things happen, right? Like a comment will be like, "Hey, look, Thomas has got a choir concert tonight. He's not going to be able to come to practice. But hey, guess what? If you want, sometimes the parent, hey, I'll go throw some balls to him, or I'll hit some balls with him, or give me something he can do on the side, so we'll be ready for the game on Saturday." Right, and that's a different situation. That's taking advantage of, taking opportunity when you don't have, or when you do have a scheduling conflict. But I think in the last thing I'll say about this is think about also parents that are really strapped for time. I know my wife and I both are very busy people, and for me as a coach, I have a hard time working with my kids. I say this a lot. People think that coaches' kids get worked with all the time, but we're often coaching other people so we can put food on the table for our families. So we actually don't get to work with our kid as much as you might think, because in those times that our kid's available, we're not available because we're working with other people's kids. So look for opportunities that are super convenient. I know for me, my son started doing soccer actually through an after school program at school. And those are great opportunities. So if you're looking for opportunities for your kid to develop in sports, or participate in sports, look for those at school, after school activities. Now, with COVID, some of it went away. So some schools, because of COVID, weren't allowing outside companies to come into the school, and there wasn't any at school, after school programs. That went away for a while, but it's coming back. And my son, which is pre-COVID, but there was a football, soccer organization that came in and would run clinics a couple days a week, and we signed him up for it. It was at school, at the field. I didn't have to worry about it. Now the school that my kids go to, there's after school programs that they do right there after school, and I don't have to worry about traveling to go pick them up, travel to go take them to their practice field or whatever. And another cool sort of PSA, if you will, for parents that may not know, if your kid's in 4th and 5th grade, now several counties in school education systems are starting elementary school sports. So it's very similar to how we have middle school and high school sports. They're taking it down to the elementary level and having you play for your school. I have several players that I work with that played on or ran track. They had a track team, so they ran track for they're in 4th and 5th grade. They just recently ran track for the elementary school, gave some pride to the school. They get the feeling of playing a sport for their school, but also it's right there at school. They practice track on the track at school, so there's a sport for your kid right in front of you. So those are opportunities for sure to be valued, and so look at those. My son, he plays ultimate, so he often he'll do ultimate practice right at school after school, and then we'll pick him up, of course, and go to his night baseball practice. But those are opportunities too to develop in sports that are right under the nose of our parents, and they should definitely be taken advantage of.
There you go. So Ben, restate your PSA for you. What are we trying to say today?
Parents, do everything you can to get your kid to practice. Remember, when you write that check, or actually now you submit your credit card information, signing up for that youth league, remember practice is a part of that, and it should be a huge part of that process, right? You're paying not only for the uniforms and the umpires and the scoreboard and the lights, you're paying for those volunteer coaches to help your kid in the field time to do that. So take advantage of that. Do what you can to get them to practice and see where it goes, and watch them grow, watch them develop. But you have to commit to practice.
Commit to practice. I'll take it. Ben Hesley, thank you so much. I appreciate it. This has been Youth Sports Talk with Coach Ben Hesley. Thank you, sir. We'll see you next week.
All right. Have a good day, everybody.